Hello, it's so good to see you, Tracy. Welcome, welcome.
Hi, Bobby. Good morning and good evening, Bobby and John.
Yes.
Good morning.
I'm very excited to introduce everybody. Can I introduce them, Tracy? Is that all right?
Absolutely.
Great. Everybody, I would love for you to meet John Knapp of Knapp Landscaping. He actually is my landscaper of my own personal home. And I have introduced everybody. Oops,
Sorry.
Something's repeating there. But I have referred clients to him over the last few years, and I just love him. So poor John, I said, John, please come on. And he's like, well, Bobby, I'm not sure. I said, yeah, you are. Come on. So John is
I actually tried ignoring you for a day or two, but that didn't work.
There you go. She is persuasive.
You know me. I wouldn't give up that easy. So
I'm glad I'm here.
Thank you for being here, John.
And we're really glad you're here too, John. Really appreciate you being here. We have Tanya who's online. Good morning, Tanya. Good morning or good evening, Tanya, depending on where you're from. John, we're talking about landscaping today, and interestingly, we have torrential rain today. Is this the day that you normally have your landscapers picnic?
Yes. They forced me to take them to lunch on these days.
Oh. Remember, and you go somewhere enclosed where there's no live plants, where people can go, what are they thinking?
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so Bobby is going to take the lead this morning, and she's going to be asking you questions and showing pictures about your local area in Raleigh, North Carolina, and the types of things that you come up against, the sort of things that you would recommend to home sellers, and exactly, where the dollars are. Really, that's why we're all here, is to find out where are the dollars when we're selling our home. And we know that vital first impression is vital. What can I say?
So, well, thank you, Tracy. John, I'd like to start off just by tell us a little bit about you and your business, how long you've been in business, and what do you specialize in, and how do you put up with me?
You're easy, that's for sure. You know what you like. When someone knows what they like, that makes it all easy. And that is important. But I moved here to Raleigh from New York in 1992 and basically started the business then. And we've got several crews out. We do a little of everything. We work for several realtors. I'm doing just exactly what we're talking about today. And we do everything from designing landscape jobs, installing it, and then maintaining it. We also do, general maintenance for properties on an ongoing basis, along with, stonework and everything else. So we do a little of everything.
Ah, that's good. Well, here's a couple business questions. Well, no, I'll get to those later. So let's get into
Don't think too hard.
Okay. So let's just look at some of these things, because I was talking with you earlier, and really as we're looking at landscaping and how it affects, how it works along with the staging process and how that gets everyone involved to that, for that great sale, for that successful sale, right?
Correct.
So my question to you is, if you had to name three things, just three basic things that almost every home you go to needs to have done prior to selling, what would those three things be?
Okay, but it's even more broad than that, but we could keep it as simple, because every house, you could have a house that's 5 years old and the plants are still in the size as they were planted, or you could have a house that's 25 years old and everything's overgrown and some things may need to be removed or pruned. But basically, it's as the client pulls up to the house, the most important thing is that they are able to see the house. Is that they drive up, and their impression of the house is going to be, it's well kept, it's clean, the landscape is simple, there aren't any trees blocking the view of it, and just in that alone, I mean, I worked for a realtor that the homeowner did not want to do anything outside, didn't feel they needed to because the inside was so beautiful. and it was listed, for several weeks. And she was saying so often people made an appointment and they drove up to the house, but then left because they didn't even feel like they wanted to go in because the outside was, you could only see a portion of the front door, and it was just a mess. And finally, she told the homeowners, the listers, that, we need to do something. And it was very simple. We went in there, raised the limbs that were blocking the entire house. So now you can have a view of the house. Mm-hmm. And we did a cleanup and a simple pruning. And the next thing is by putting mulch on the ground. Prior to mulching the property, we have, I don't know if you use them where you are, but we have a power edger, which is a machine that creates a really fine line and a border between whether you have grass or stone and where you might put mulch down. So I've had homeowners, like, they were doing their mulch next to us one day, and we did our job. And when we were done, they're saying, how come your property looks so much nicer than what we're putting the same mulch down. We did the same thing, but their lines were all dirty. It wasn't even. And basically I showed them the machine we used. And as just a common person, you may not even recognize or realize that there is an edge that makes it, but it's that fine line, like maybe a painter that does, the edges perfectly and doesn't get it on the door edge or something. Like, you don't realize it until you don't have it.
Well, you know what? Hold on a second. I've got pictures. Remember earlier I showed you some pictures. I got some pictures that are perfect for this. Maybe you can walk us through this. Let me see. Share screen. Here we go. There we go. And so here we go. So here's a perfect example of one that's lined and one that's not lined, right?
Correct. The one to our left with the tree with the mulch on it, you can see the very distinct line between the grass and the mulch. And being that the other area is more of a natural area, it almost doesn't matter that much. But you can see how it all kind of blends together. And when you're mulching or putting stone as the edge, having that edge just creates it makes you feel right. It's just clean lines, Look
at that. Look at how you said stones, and I just slid that right in.
Right, you're good.
Yeah, that's all good.
So that edge is key, but then what finishes it, and same thing with when we're doing our job to get the house ready for a listing, is by putting that mulch down. We use pine straw or mulch, several different types of mulch. When that's in, it's as if you're giving the landscape, like a paint job. It's very similar to putting a new color on the front of your house or inside of the house. When you put that mulch down, it gives it such a fine, fresh look. And like this house is a perfect example. I
am stealing that, John. I am stealing that all day long. So putting down mulch is like painting your front yard.
Correct.
Like a fresh coat of paint.
And you can see it on this house. I'm not sure if there are any other, by the front of the house, you see the contrast between the plants and the mulch and the house and the mulch. And it just gives it a very fresh, when you drive up to this house, you're going to say, man, I can't wait to see the inside because it's so inviting.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to skip ahead, pretend you guys don't see those other pictures. So here's the mulch, and this is that fine line, right? Along the edge?
Yes.
Yep. And then here, and this is one of those, do you guys have those big natural areas, Tracy? Like we do, like we've got this house, there's like a bunch of just natural growing trees. It's not manicured, but we call those natural areas. Do you guys have those?
We have quite a variety, Bobby, of places. So on coastal homes, no, but we have hinterland homes where we go up into the hills, and yes, you would have a lot more larger properties, big natural areas. A lot of it can be overgrown or looking quite natural. Full of weeds, can be full of weeds.
Well,
right.
It's like this particular house, the natural area, it's like the house, it just has such a refined look to it. And it just felt like the yard looked naked as you approached it without having that nice mulch up front. So this is like, so John, do you do this technique too, where you just like stop and then let the natural area go with the mulch?
Yes, very often, especially a large area like that. Of course, everyone knows when you're selling your house, you want to put just enough money in to make it sell quickly and not overdo it. And it gives you the curb appeal here, but then when you drive in, you don't miss it on the natural area.
That's
it gives you that first impression up from the street, but you don't have to overdo it. You don't have to spend a lot of money to make your house look beautiful and appealing.
And what is that mulch you're using? Because I always love red cedar mulch, John, and Bobby and I have a conversation about that every time. So what are you using there?
It's kind of interesting what's happened here. When we first started in '92, the only mulch that really people used as far as hardwood was hardwood bark mulch, where they would shred it 2 or 3 times. If you only got double shredded, it was a little chunkier. Then it's triple shredded bark. And then I think it just got so busy that type of product, people still use it, but it's deteriorated a little bit. And as Raleigh's become, more of this, I don't know, finer place or metropolis, they're starting to actually dye mulches. And this is a dyed mulch.
Yeah.
They either get wood pallets that chop it up, which is kind of nice because they're recycling something instead of throwing it away and dye it, or they actually get the hardwood the bark mulch, and they dye it. And they do dye it in brown, like this color, red or black.
Right.
So you're seeing the brown here. And I never liked it, but as I'm doing more with realtors and doing more with people, it is more of a refined look. It's more, it's even, it lasts longer than the other mulch, and the quality of the other mulch just isn't what it used to be. So I seem to use this more often.
Okay. So John, if I'm trying to do it myself, and I have seen that a lot, where I will recommend to clients that they put some mulch around their trees, how do we, without the power tools, get that great line?
Well, I guess there are 2 things. There's, I'm not sure if we have a Home Depot here, and there's several rental places that I could go to. If you have really large jobs, I have a few of those, but sometimes we have very large jobs. We need 4 or 5 of them going. So I'll rent them from a Sunbelt rental or a Home Depot. So I'm sure you have rental places that you could rent it, and you do it yourself. And I guess the thing is before we do this, we spray a line. We kind of like design what the edge will be, because there are times that you may want to edge around a tree or around a bed, but here we have grass, and a lot of times grass just doesn't grow well everywhere. It could be certain edges get more heat than other. So you want to look at this. You may want your bed's always been in this one place, but for whatever, a certain area may not be growing well anymore. So you want to incorporate or enlarge your bed to try to, nature's going to win the battle all the time.
That's true.
Look at your situation, not what you expect or have had in the past, but what has happened since you lived there, and try to bring in weak areas into your beds and draw it out with paint, which they have spray paints with a wand. It's very easy to do. And then this might be a perfect example of, the bed might have been a lot smaller to the left near that tree, but over time that grass might have became weak. So that's a large bed, but you would never look at it if it has a nicer curve now than it did originally.
Yeah.
And, so you cover up with paint, so to speak, with mulch instead of paint, the bad areas. So look at it with a broad mind, paint the lines that you use, and the machine is not difficult to use. You walk backwards and you pull it, and it creates a very nice line. And the end result of this is simple landscape talk, but the end result is you've got a fine line and a lot of dirt built up on the inside. And so I've seen homeowners, they do that, and they leave this swell of soil, and then they put mulch over it, and it looks silly because you have this nice line and this mound all the way around the edge because they didn't take the next step. And the next step is to get a rake and smooth that soil out so it blends in and you really have that distinct line. Otherwise, it's worse. You were better off not using the edger. So So use it properly. Take that second step. Pull the soil away, and then you're ready to mulch. And if you could get the mulch in bulk, you put it down. You drop smaller piles around, not big wheelbarrows full, because it's hard to spread it. And you just try to spread it as evenly as possible. So
how deep do you recommend? I mean, okay, when you're selling a house and you're not, 2 inches?
2 inches is what we do. 2 to 3 inches.
2 to 3 inches. And that also keeps weeds from growing, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, whether you're selling your house or not, it's a good idea to put the mulch down. It's better for if you have plants, it keeps moisture in. I mean, obviously it's warm where you are, it's warm where we are. If you don't have it, you have weeds growing constantly and the roots dry out and the plants suffer. They won't bloom as nicely, and you'll have to water them more often, where this allows the water to get in, and it's healthier for the plants. It keeps the moisture in. So it's really critical.
Well, John, I have a question for you too. Like this picture here, we have some flowering, bushes, as well as a couple, looks like annuals maybe. So my question is this. When I go to a house, and especially when a home has an overgrown landscape, many times I will see, here we have these boxwood hollies that people will let them get like 5-6 feet tall, and they'll be overwhelming the windows, etc. And so many times when I go in and I'm making my recommendations, I will say to them, wow, they've become so incredibly big. They're out of scale to the house now. And they will say to me, oh, well, no, we'll just cut them back. And I will say to them, well, understand, when you cut those back, you're going to have all of these empty legs with no leaves on them. So you're going to have these dead looking sticks in front of the house. So what I will generally do is recommend that they pull all of that old out and then bring in select pieces, just some foundation plants. And again, I'm always keeping to a minimum, but proper scale and proper design for the house. And so my question, and probably 7 times out of 10, they listen, but those three that get away, they insist on cutting those shrubs back. And then when picture day comes, they have these sticks sticking up. Right. So my question is this: if somebody does not want to do the investment of bringing in new plants, and they do that really harsh haircut on the shrubs, how long should they give themselves to allow that plant to fill back out?
Yeah, this comes up often. And unfortunately, you get people being in the staging world, earlier in the game. And it really, depending on the time of year, it is the key. And often I can meet with people 3 to 6 months before they know they want to list the property. And here, everything flushes out in March and April. So we go through the winter, things are dormant. And so I would tell somebody, if we have that luxury at that, I don't know about where you are, but it seems like springtime is the key, where everyone gets through the winter, and that's when the rush is to list. So we're fortunate here where that may work, where we can cut it back dramatically, and the plant won't be full for maybe 3 months, but you could start getting new leaves and flushing out, 6 weeks later, where you could see the plant is still alive, it's getting green on it, and it has potential. But I agree with you. If you could tell the people, a plant really isn't that expensive, removing it, it's no different than putting land. Plants, a lot of plants they look good up to about 14 years or so, and they start to deteriorate and they get old. And if you could convince them that, to a little bit of investment, get rid of that old plant that is too old, it's too large for the area, it was maybe planted, it was a quarter of the size when it was planted, and should have only been 3 plants, but now there's 5 or 8. And, really we need 3 plants. So you rip them out, it's really a minimalist expense to get something fresh and youthful in there, just like having this mulch, what you see, and instantly it changes the front yard. So, fortunately 7 out of 10 listen, but if you don't catch the plant when it's flushing out and you do it late in the season, it may die and never come back. Or you if you're lucky, you'll get a little bit of growth, and you may have to wait another year. But here, if you prune June or July when it's very hot, you could run into problems, and you won't see another leaf on it.
And I'd just like to say hello to Marielle, who's on the line with us as well.
Hi, Marielle.
And you actually answered one of my questions, which is around how long before are you going to start getting your garden ready? But you brought up something really interesting, which was when you're talking about spring, it's kind of easy when you have a winter, a fairly mild winter, as you guys appear to similar, the same as we have a mild winter. But then what happens if we're preparing for what we would call autumn, what you would call fall sale, and we're starting in summer and we have hot, humid, they can be rainy, sort of temperamental summers, really. How do we get ready in that type of climate?
Well, that's a tough question, because fall is just like spring. If you're removing things and planting, it's really a great time to plant. From fall to dead of winter is probably the best time to do any planting. So if you're going to rip out old bushes, it's better to do it then than in the summer. Really, summer is the worst time to do any dramatic pruning or planting. Yeah. So the fall, you're in good shape. I wouldn't recommend doing any severe pruning like Bobby was talking on boxwood or evergreens, because it's going to start going into dormant season and you're not going to have anything. So if a homeowner, that's when you're selling it, I hope they're one of the 7 people that agree to change it, because it would be a very big mistake to do any dramatic pruning at that time of the year from fall to winter. So I guess you would try to prune it down as much as possible, leaving a little bit of greenery, and then doing everything else to make it look nice, and go with that if they're not willing to actually put new plants in. So I guess springtime, you have options, early spring, either remove it, put new plants in, or cut the plants back dramatically. Summer, it's mild prune. Fall, it's fall and winter, it's just you should replant. And they've got to know that their options are limited at different times of year.
Mm-hmm. So really we're saying, John, and this is a great learning moment for me too, is really for those people who are going to wait until after summer, they really need to be thinking about their garden 9 months out. That if they start thinking about it in the spring.
Yeah, ideally it would be great. I would, if they have that luxury, I would be looking at their plants. Like this is a perfect example where if you can't see the house, so way in advance you could start limiting, and especially if they're on a budget and they don't want to do all at one time, look at it, limb the tree up. You could go up 15 feet on the tree there, and now all of a sudden you see your house, it's more welcoming. They could do planting months, and then I'd hold off on the mulch, things like that. They don't have to mulch it while they're living there. And right prior to, either taking photographs or listing the property is when I would go in there with the edger and mulch, and, maybe do a fine prune or something like that to really have it looking as fresh as possible.
Yeah.
So now I love that you've brought that up, John, because it's that whole timing. And if people will do those things, it also gives those shrubs that they've given a prune to the opportunity to flush out, or then they may decide that they do need to replace them. But I love that you said, do the edging and the mulching right before the photos. I like to tell folks, do the mulching and the edging and the adding of the flowers, the color right up near the front door, or just some fixture like the pond or the fountain or something like that, putting that color, do that last minute right before the photos, and then power wash the driveway and the walkway, because it makes the whole house just looks like $1 million when all that's done in that order. Because I feel so bad for people, they power wash their driveway and then they get the mulch delivered. And it's like, so yeah.
I've watched that many times.
Yeah, yes. So yeah, we were just, because we were talking about this particular house. the gal was actually going to remove that river birch. She didn't have really any money to sell her house, but I don't know if you can tell, but at the base, the sidewalk had buckled. And so when I was walking up to the house, she says, I know, I'm having someone remove the tree. And I said, I'm a little dramatic. You guys know that. I threw my arms around the tree and I said, no, this tree will sell your house. And so, there was the limbing up and the editing of some of the other little shrubs in the yard. And when the house was finally revealed, I mean, that tree was fantastic. And it really did. It helped the house sell quickly. So that's just one of my favorite befores and afters, because look at this. You can't even see the heart of the home.
Right.
See the little heart?
Yeah. And that's a shame, because it's a nice house and some people may not have even gone in. And that happens too often.
It does. And I've been invited to stage homes like that, John, where the front entry area is impossible. It's so overgrown. It's impossible to see the home within. And I know that some places, certainly some places here, have privacy fences and things like that, where, funnily enough, one day I was going to my hairdresser's. No, a friend of mine was, and she hadn't been before. And she rang me and said, where is it in the street? And I said, it's number 14. It's the blue fence. And she said, there's no blue fence on number 14. And I'm like, there is definitely a blue fence on number 14. Well, as it turned out, she and the kids had gotten out on the weekend and had painted their blue fence in a baby poo colour. And so it was kind of baby poo brown and very different. I had to ring the hairdresser and say, what's happening? There's no blue fence out the front of your house. And she said, oh, yeah, we painted it on the weekend. But what about in that situation too, where, for example, this beautiful home you can see, you've got a big fence up in front of it. How are some of the ways that we can transition into that home? I read a book a few years ago called A Pattern Language, and it talks about that transition, that what your job really as a landscaper is to transition us from our street selves into our home selves. And that you use things like changes in the turf, changes in the landscape. You go from hardscape to a more softscape. You have a path leading to the front door. You have steps going up to the front door. You have a doormat, a doorbell, greenery, different things like that. How does that? I guess I'm curious about that psychological side of it as well.
Well, we don't have that much of that here. I'm trying to envision what that looks like. I guess, we have places where they're gated and, pillars going into our gate. So you could create an environment, kind of like a frame leading into the property, where I'm thinking of this one house in particular where it's gated, and the way we created the bed and it opens up towards the house. So it gives you this feeling of like, once you enter this, you're like, you've come into this beautiful world, as things open up. And if we didn't create these beds leading to it, it would have just been a straight driveway, leading to this. So there were a lot of trees that we had to remove, and to give this illusion of like going through a gate that only a car could go through. And by creating this view of like an hourglass almost, all of a sudden opens up your world. We had rose bushes on either side. So as you may not even notice it as you're coming in, but once you cross that line, you're in this beautiful environment. So I guess everywhere is different. And, depending on how the house is located. But I guess from that gate open, you could do a lot of things to broaden the view of the house and accentuate it with landscaping. But I'd have to probably see it to know exactly what to do.
Well,
okay, John, now can I put you in the hot seat? Bobby,
I think you already did with that one.
I was going to say, I didn't know. I didn't know John was such a poet, talking about that opening in here. I was very impressed.
I love that hourglass.
Great, John. That's awesome.
There you go.
But you are, John. I mean, like ourselves, you're a designer. You are someone who is creating aesthetics from a, you're creating a picture from a diverse landscape, and we just happen to do it inside the home, but you're doing the same thing externally.
Right.
Well, one of the things I really have appreciated about John is that he's a problem solver, because I will go in and I'll say, okay, in my perfect world, this is what I would like to see. And I'll say, I would like to have a shrub here. This might work or that might work, but just ask John, he'll know. And there's so many times. There was actually a friend and client, mutual client of John and mine. And I said, well, just have John come. And she was having some issues with drainage and things. I passed it just a minute ago. And when I went to her house, I said, wait a minute, who did this? It was just a simple thing, right? But right along the edge of the sidewalk going up to her house. And this is part of that transitioning. In the past, I had been there, and that little place was forever kind of erosion. Mm-hmm. And she had tried different things that it always looked makeshift, and it always looked like, oh, you got an erosion problem. And when I went to her house after John and his team had been there, I walked up and I saw this. And I mean, this picture does not do it justice, because it just looks so elegant. And he had it where there were other rocks in the landscape that tied it all together. And I took a picture of this because I knew it was a big issue, but it was just well done. Even the color of the stone, it just kind of melds in with the sidewalk. So it didn't feel all choppy. It didn't feel as if, adding another element to the space, but it served a great purpose. So I love that. And then, actually, this is some stonework too, that the natural lay of the land in this particular yard, it's a very much a hilly area. It could very much be an erosion problem. So instead of being a problem, it's a solution through your landscape. So that's one of the things I appreciate about what John's able to do. And then this was also the same client, and it's just the practical solution of having the grass 3 to 4 inches off of your edging in your yard, because then you don't have to worry about doing the edging. You can just run the mower around the edge without the extra. So it's practicalities. It's one of the things I love about John.
Right. No, it's good that you showed it. That first photograph with the pebble, with the stone, the river stone, it's as simple as it gets. And it's if you saw it before and you knew the issues were with it, you would recognize it every single time you walk into the house. And this is really not a job to be that proud of, because it's as simple as it gets, but it also shows that you could create, improve an environment with very little expense and effort. And by doing this, it just made the entrance so much more appealing. Mm-hmm. And as far as the other drainage issue, I guess you do get torrential rains and so forth. And so people may want mulch or plants or just even soil in certain areas where naturally the water ran down this area through that bed. So the mulch was always going the driveway, and then the soil's going the driveway. This is a little bit more elaborate, but by doing this, when it's not raining, it looks nice because it's a dry riverbed, and it's appealing. When it does rain, the water runs through there. It slows the rain up, so it naturally empties into the driveway, and it serves a purpose also. So, I'm sure you have the same situation there. Just simple little fixes to problems without putting underground. Some people might come in and say, you need to put in a French drain and run underground things and put it under your driveway. You don't always need to do that. And there are times you do need to do that, and it needs to be done at a house, but there are simpler solutions.
I love that too, John. It looks beautiful as well.
Right, it is nice.
So
and you brought up a question for me as well about, and you can see it in that photo that Bobby just showed. What do you do when do you throw seed on the grass? How do you get those patchy areas to not look so patchy, or is that again starting 9 months out, 6 months out, 3 months out?
It's tough. I mean, grass, especially here, grass, it's natural, and if you live in this area, our grass looks good from September, through June or July. Then it starts deteriorating, and it's just the world of this area. It gets so hot. We have winter, night rains, and then we get fungus that grows in the grass. So it is, depending on when you're selling, it's a difficult situation. If there's certain spots that right at the entrance that you would want to look nice immediately, I would suggest putting sod in, even meant piecing sod in. It's a quick fix. It doesn't have to be that expensive if it's a key area. But if it's a lot of your yard is deteriorated, you're selling it in July and August, I think you just have to say, wait another month. In September we'll be seeding, and it'll look, within 10 days it's going to look beautiful. And that's
wow.
Yeah. That's kind of an education for someone moving to this area, and if they already live here, they're aware of it. That we're almost going to seed every house every year. It's just we live in a very difficult area. It's too cool for the summer grasses that you grow in Florida, and it's too warm for the the beautiful Kentucky bluegrass that you get up north. So it's a transitional area that it's a tough battle to keep the grass, and people know it.
Yeah, we fight the fight.
It's not that expensive. If there's a key area and you just need a few pieces to make it look appealing, especially if it's by a pool or by their front doors, somewhere that you want it to be appealing, it's worth spending that money to make that area look, presentable and enjoyable.
And I'd really love to ask about that, John, because, I know that, but we always say you can cut your own hair, you can cut your own grass, but is it advisable when there's a lot of dollars at stake? What are we talking about? Not necessarily in dollar terms, but in aesthetics, with regard to people amateurs, as we all are, in areas that aren't our chosen field. How do you rate what I'm going to be able to achieve as a home seller and what you're going to be able to achieve relatively inexpensively as a professional over a period of time?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I think once you prepared the property and you mulched and you did everything you need to do, there are some homeowners and neighbors that we go to, they're weekend warriors. These guys live for the lawn. And in a crazy way, I could almost say they could do a better job, because they spend all weekend, like they'll, pick out, and they do a beautiful job. And if you're that type of a person, and you have the proper tools and you love your job, and you would know it when you're listing that house, that this guy's doing an amazing job, or a woman. I would say let them do it, but that's probably 1 out of 10, or maybe more than that. When we go into a yard, it's okay. Like a perfect example is when you create that edge with the power edger, you have a fine line. It's a 90-degree angle, and it's beautiful. Most homeowners don't have the tools, or they don't have the experience to turn that string trimmer vertically to keep that line clean. Over time, they'll mow it, and that grass will grow over, and all of a sudden you've got this nice line. You have all this grass growing in there, and it's like a bad haircut that's crooked. That line is no longer going to be there. So we know how to use the machinery properly, and so you keep that edge good. If you don't know it, a lot of times we see homeowners with the string trimmer on their sidewalks trying to create that line, and it's just they just destroy it. I look at them like, oh my gosh, I want to get out there and teach them and show them how to do it, just because it's horrible. So just those simple things make a difference. And the machinery that we use makes really nice lines after you mow it. So when we change at different times, so you see patterns that people like, and a lot of homeowners, they can't do that. And then we spend the time afterwards blowing everything off perfectly, and picking up things, spraying Roundup so weeds don't continue to grow. But really, I think the key is the machinery that we use and the experience that we have. It's I think compared to the average homeowner, it's worth spending that money while you're listing the property, and not trying to tackle it on your own, because it would only be a couple of weeks that the house goes right back to what it used to look like.
Yeah.
Well, so then my question becomes, John, now, unless they want to fly you to Australia,
Yeah.
Which you'd be willing to do, right?
Absolutely.
How would you, what should a homeowner look for in a landscaper? What are the kind of questions they should ask when they go to hire a professional?
Well, I guess, it's amazing because I guess the first thing you want to meet with several people and see who you get along with the best. It's really, especially as the maintenance goes, I have a lot of friends that are in the business, and it's, really quickly who you want to do business with or not, just like any profession. So first of all, I'd say, who do I like? Who's appealing, their personality? Who is asking you questions as the owner? What do you like? The way when I meet a new person, I walk around the property with them and ask them, like, what's your favorite part of the yard? What does your eye go to? Like, I have customers that's, we talked about that and say, for some reason, when I drive in my driveway, my eye goes right there. And if the grass isn't a certain height or if something isn't correct, it bothers me. And I ask everybody, what is the one thing that and everyone has some favorite part of the yard. And I want to know what is a point for them. So I keep it nice for them. So I try to find out, what do they like the most? What areas do they spend? Where is your kitchen that you're looking out into your backyard that all day long, like certain window areas? So we know that they're looking at certain parts of the yard more often than others. So maybe pay more attention to that as far as a homeowner living in the property. And you just want to see if the person's listening to the things you want to like, that you like, and that you get along with them, their experience, over time. I just picked up a bunch of clients because there was a very good landscape company that was in the area, and they did beautiful work, but they got out of the maintenance. So this guy bought their business, and it's a one-person crew, and he doesn't know anything. And it's amazing because it's one neighborhood, all the people are calling us up, and they felt really bad because they were so happy earlier, and they feel bad for this person that just bought it. But clearly he's too new, and he hasn't had the opportunity to learn, and doesn't have the people, the manpower to get the jobs done. So that's another thing, is, do they do the work themselves? If they do, is it a limited number of people, or do you have people helping you where you could, handle the work? Also, when I'm dealing with realtors, I tell them that if you tell me in advance, I'll try to get to your house prior to certain listing times. I can't always do that, but it's, especially if I'm working with Bob or some of our mutual friends, that they could say, we're having a busy day on Friday, could you come Thursday? Or Saturday, we're having an open house, can you come in the morning? And so that's important to know their flexibility. I can't always tell people 100% of the time I could rearrange my schedule for you, but at least they know I'd be willing to do that with notice, And I think that's important when dealing with realtors and so forth.
Yeah. So what should we expect? So let's say I meet with 3 different people, and I'm talking to them, and the questions I would ask would be, well, me, I'm the big insurance girl. So I would ask, do you have insurance? Right. And is that like industry standard for landscapers to have insurance?
It's a crazy industry. I think a lot, if you're a medium to larger company, you have it, okay. But it's a good question to ask, because this is landscaping here is a lot different than a plumber or electrician here. You have everyone's prices, no one's you have everything, every side of the spectrum. So I'd probably say it's 50-50 here that someone's carrying insurance or not. Okay. If they're not a big company. So it is a very good question to ask.
Okay.
And when am I going to need insurance, John? When are you going to need insurance? What sort of situations can arise? Is that when you hit a pipe, or?
Yeah, here you carry liability insurance and workers' comp. I mean, it's crazy situations where you could be mowing and the stone is in someone's yard and you hit it with the mower and it goes through the car window or house window. It's usually things like that. And you have the insurance, rarely do you even use it, but if someone got hurt where the workers' comp is here, and it maybe help me more than the owner, but if someone got hurt on a job, it would protect me. I don't think they would come after you got, a homeowner if you got hurt on the property, but those are good things you want to know, that they have basic liability if they damage your house and it was a large, issue, that they could, I had a perfect instance. Someone thought they were spraying weed killer on a yard, that would keep the grass green, but only kill the broadleaf weeds in it. And it was mixed with Roundup, which kills everything. So this guy went around to like 15 houses and literally killed entire yards. And it was horrible. Horrible. It wasn't me.
Oh, good.
I'll tell you that those things happen, or you could put the broadleaf weed killer down, and the temperature supposed to be 80 degrees or below. And if somehow it gets brutally hot too soon and it's still wet, you could kill, huge areas of the lawn where, it could be $10,000 to repair that. And that's where the insurance will pay for that. If you didn't have insurance and the homeowner wanted him to resod or reseed all those properties, the guy may not have been able to afford it. And he's in trouble. And he'd get a bad reputation and lose those people.
Gotcha. Yeah. So how often should I guess everywhere would be different depending on what your grass needs are or what your maintenance would be.
Correct. And different types of grass. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
John, I have a question for you. When, if I am a weekend warrior, if I love my garden and I'm out there and I'm doing things all the time, one of the issues that Bobby and I have internally is that people will tend to decorate to their own taste. Is that something that you encounter in the garden as well? Are people planting to their own taste, which may be a different generation to their buyer?
That's a tough question. It's, I really haven't thought about that, because it seems like the people that, I don't know, it's rare. I do see things that I would look at and say, wow, what a mistake. But there's not that many times that I would go somewhere and see something that's, fortunately, flowers are beautiful, and, I see things, I guess, I see people planting things where the front, it looks good now, but in a month from now, the plants in the front get larger than the ones in the back. So you don't see the ones in the back any longer. So, color is color, and you just want to make sure whatever you put in is going to obstruct something else, and there is some rhyme or reason to what you're putting in. And I think a lot of garden centers, especially, if you had a photograph of what you wanted to do, and ask them, say, I'd like to put some flowers in, what do you recommend? It's a sunny spot, it's a shady spot, and that's probably a good advice to them. But, if you're those warriors that are good, they usually do their research, and people know now, and with all the information online, I think before you do anything, someone's reviewing it and looking at it and making better decisions than we saw in the past.
Well, John, you've actually touched on a pet peeve of mine. In that when I'll
only one, right?
What's that?
The only pet peeve.
Oh. Well, one of the things is that people overplant. Yeah. They'll get a shrub that's this big, and I don't know why they don't read the tag, because if it's natural, it's going to be this big, so people will then plant and put 5 of them in an area where maybe 3 would have been enough, if not 2.
Correct.
And spend the rest of their life trying to cut it down against its natural growth habit to keep it teeny tiny, or they let it go. So what can we do to stop that? These people need help. They need help. So what do you do? What do you do, John?
Well, I think it's human nature. I mean, builders and landscapers on brand new properties, they're trying to sell the house as quickly as possible and filling in gaps. And unfortunately, our world is instant gratification, and, even that homeowner that's listing the house, may put too many plants in because they want it to look full and look pretty, and it does look full and pretty right now. Yeah. And you might be in the ideas, I want it to look as good as it can right now, so I'm going to overdo it because they're thinking I'm going to be out of the house in a couple of months or as soon as we get rid of it. and that's all that matters. So, I guess, and that may work. You know what I mean? It's a tough.
Well, I think we need to start a HA club, Horticulturalists Anonymous. People trying to step off from the plants.
It's a tough line. I mean, you want to sell the house, and maybe for now more is better because it fills a large bed. But
I think that might be like an interesting little side thing to do sometime, where we like just show a bed and then go to the garden center, because what they do is they buy the $6 shrubs and they'll buy 12 of them to fill in the space. And then whereas if they had bought the $20 shrubs of the same kind that were just larger, they could have put 5 in, and it would have looked better, and it's less people alive.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, so that might be something we should do sometime. Just kind of like do a layout of a little bed, and then do the layout with the little ones, and we talk about the growth habit, and then the big ones and their growth habit, and talk about how actually they save money.
Yeah, with an analysis of the cost of doing it. That's a good point.
Exactly.
And just education. I think over time, again, maybe people with everything online, your people are learning what to do properly.
Yeah. So see, you might be on TV or be on the computer with me more. So
I was going to say, John, you started today a bit camera shy, and now we're suddenly talking about a spin-off series.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm enjoying this.
There you go.
It's great. It's always interesting for us to learn from people like yourself. But one of the things that it seems to bring up for me, because when people go to the garden store or the hardware store here, they will get recommendations about paint, about plants, about a lot of areas of the home. They can be fairly generic recommendations. They're not talking to somebody who has been to their home and seen the condition and seen what they're dealing with. So they're really trying to speak in generalities, give them things that I find that people are being given plants, or they're being given colours that are actually generic. It's like, yes, this should work. Again, any thoughts on how to overcome that? Is it just self-education, using a professional?
Well, I guess, using a professional is key, because really, depending on how much sun you get in an area, opposed to shade. Here we have deer that destroy most plants, so all those things you have to take into consideration. Some people say, I want to have a lot of flowering plants and all these color, and it would be beautiful, and there are plenty of plants to use. However, herds of deer pass through their house, and unfortunately, really limited at that point what you can and can't use. But if you were to not, if you didn't want to use a professional, I would basically take a photograph of the house, know the environment, go to an area where, again, even if it meant getting an education, and go to that nursery and say, this is what I have. We have, sun on this side, shade on another side, and what do you recommend? They will help you with plants. You can write it down, buy that from them, or go somewhere else. But it's definitely important to know your environment, have photographs, and then, get advice if you can.
And Bobby has some photos here too.
I was actually trying to stop the share, but it won't let me. So instead,
okay, let me see if I can, Bobby. Stop share.
Yeah, this was just a one saying, simplicity's the key. That's it. So.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example where that property, you may want to have flowering shrubs or flowers in front, but there are a lot of deer in that area, and we have these nandinas that are the red plants that you see in front. So you have your typical foundation. It's nice because they're layers, but then you have the red nandina, which it gives you the red color, and it makes you feel like you're looking at a flower. However, it's not, and deer don't eat it. So you are able to get some color in the property and use a plant that deer aren't not interested in, and there are not very many that has color that you could use like them.
I'd love to ask John about colour. You know, what sort of colour? I know Bobby was referring to having some colour by the front door, and it's certainly something that I recommend to people too. But where are we putting colour? Where would you put colour in a home for sale if you're looking at flowering plants?
Well, I guess it's always nice to have something, you know, at the entrance of the door prior to walking in. And along with color, it's crazy. I don't know if you have gardenias. Sorry, there's a dog that's giving me a puppy that's giving me a tough time. I might get up and lock them out in a second for 1 second, but you know, it's nice to have at the entrance. I mean, if you have that ability to put flowers, and you know, I try to incorporate gardenias, which are flowering now, and has a beautiful aroma. You know, to be able to walk into a house and have an aroma along with something that's aesthetically pleasing. It's, you know, it's really nice to have. Sometimes if you could create a bed at the entrance of the driveway from the street to the entrance is nice. And if you don't have the ability to create a bed just because the environment isn't nice, maybe you could get a pedestal like a planter or something to put at the entrance where you could have some flowers hanging over to just, you know, brings color and look nice, and it's inexpensive also. And
you just, when you were talking about the dog and the deer, I was wondering how much, what do people need to do if they have domestic animals and they're preparing their garden for sale? Are there some things that they need to think about?
I don't know. It depends on the dog. This puppy is damaging everything. So we have beautiful flowers out front, and he tends to like digging in them and playing in them. And so, I put these not chemicals, but really odorous powder around the flowers to keep the deer away. And they hate it, but the dog likes it. So he's out there coming in. He smells horrendous after licking up a pound of this powder that smells horrible. So, you know, the deer aren't eating it, but the puppy is terrible.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Do you mind if I bow for 10 seconds, not even 5 seconds, and lock him out? Because it's
okay. I'm going to stop video on you, John. I think. No, I'm not.
You did yourself, Tracy. There we go.
Oh my gosh. Chewing on some furniture behind me, and I just could hear the damage. But
he's back.
Oh, you're back. You're back. Yes. I didn't need to stop video. So we were just going to talk amongst ourselves. John, it's 1 minute to the hour. So amazing information that you've given us.
It's 8 o'clock.
And Bobby, do you have any final questions for John?
So John, was this as bad as you thought it was going to be?
No, I can't believe an hour has gone by.
Good.
Enjoyed it. It's nice talking to both of you.
Good.
John, do you mind? Can you click your camera? We can't see.
I don't know. I was afraid to do anything because I didn't.
It's all right.
I didn't know. I just ignored it because I'm like, I might stop the whole thing.
No.
So I was just going to say, John, if folks want to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
I guess you can email me. It's probably the best way to do it, right?
And what's your email?
It's Knapp, my last name, Knapp, landscape@gmail.com.
Okay, and if you sit up straight, we can all see Knapp Landscaping on your shirt. That's good marketing there, buddy.
Right. Knapp Landscaping on my shirt, but the email is singular. It's Knapp.
There you go. Okay, Knapp Landscaping. Got it. So
we'll put that down underneath this video, John, and then you can share this with people who are interested. And I'm looking forward to seeing you and Bobby out on the streets of Raleigh, showing us how it's done.
There you go. And Tanya, thank you for sticking with us. It was good to have you here today.
And everyone else who's watching, please give us some love down below. Let us know if you like this video. Go and visit us at www.presentationcells.com or successfulstaging.com. And you can ask us any questions underneath, and I'll be sure to put John's details down below so you can send him an email as well.
Okay. I'll see you soon, John.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you,
Bye
John.
now.
Take care.